Now go ahead and open up your Flutter Amazon clone app. Now we are going to make use of the backend authentication API for the sign in and sign up in here in our Flutter project. So right click on model, new, create a new .file by the name user_model. Let's define the attributes for our data, for example the user ID, user type, username, email, password, user address, and the JWT token through its constructor user model. Now let's create the map string dynamic type data to map, which will basically return a string dynamic type key values. For example, the key will be in string format, the value can be dynamic. For example, for the user ID, type, name, email, password, address, and JWT token. These are the keys, in front of it are the values which are stored inside these variables. After that, we will implement factory user model dot from data map string dynamic, the data which we get from the API, that is from using our API from the MongoDB. We can represent it by the name, let's say for example data map. Return user model, which contains the data repository, or you can say the user data. For example, the data, as I told you, we will get using this data map, which is of type string dynamic, which simply means the key name in string format. The value of it can be dynamic. It can be int, double, string, any type. So for example, now in order to get the ID, we will have to use this _ID key name, which is from the database. So we can say data map, then our key name, which is in the database, _ID. We want to get this ID as a string. Now we are going to add here a condition. If this ID we get successfully, that is if that ID exists in the database, okay, using this _ID key, we are getting basically its value, and this is the value of it. So we check, if we get that ID as string, simply get that. Otherwise, if it do not exist, then in that case assign to this empty string, now to which we will assign these values. These are basically to get the values, okay, that is if this ID exists, that is data map _ID, which simply means this thing, okay, this key. To this we are getting this one. So if the value exists, then simply it will get the value, and that value we will access using our user ID variable. So in simple words, the value of ID from the database is accessible by user ID. Otherwise, if this ID _ID has no value, then in that case assign empty string to this user ID. Then user ID will have empty string. Same goes for the other ones. For example, the user type we get, which is by the same key name, user type. Okay, so make sure to use the same key names, that is getting the data from the database. So it gets the value of user type from database and assign to user type. Let's say if it do not exist, it will simply assign empty string to user type, which is our variable which we will access in our app in order to manipulate, or you can say display data on the user interface. Similarly, then we get username, then user email, user password, and user address. Please confirm the key names with your database, and which are accessible by the required variables in our Flutter app using our user model. Then after it, factory user model dot from JSON string data source return user model dot from data map, and we have to basically decode our data source. So we can simply say JSON dot decode, and pass the data source to it as map string dynamic. And here for this we can say string to JSON return JSON dot encode and encode the data to map. Now to send the data, for example, using your API to the database, let's say to manipulate the data, or you can say, let's say, update data, the user data. For that purpose, we first encode the data and we send that data. Okay. And other than that, when we retrieve data using our API from the MongoDB, so that data map, or you can say that data comes in encoded form from the database. So that data we decode that data as map string dynamic, which we can access anywhere in our app for the logged in user or for any other user using their variables, or you can say using their attribute names. Now we are ready to send request for the sign up and sign in. So for sending request using our API, you know that we have to add the HTTP in our Flutter project. So let's quickly add here HTTP dependency and then click pubget. Once it is added successfully, then let's create a new folder. Right click on lib new directory. We create a folder by the name assistance. Right click on assistance new dot file and let's give it name as assist underscore HTTP. First of all, import the HTTP as HTTP assist HTTP, and this assist HTTP function will basically receive some parameters. For example, HTTP.response, which is represented by response HTTP, comma, required build context, which is represented by build context. Make sure to import the material.dart, comma, then the third one which is required here is the void callback, which is on success condition. You can break the code in pieces so you can see it easily, just like this. Now what we are going to do here is we will add a switch statement in order to handle the statuses for the HTTP. If you remember, we have the status code 200, 400, 500, 201 and so on. So for that purpose we can say switch response HTTP dot status code. Now one by one we will access each status, that is each status code will have its own case. So for example, first one is, let's say if it is 201, it is the success condition, that is we will call here the on success condition, and we will add a break. Then the second case will be 400. Now 400, you already know that it represents a bad request, so we will display a toast message. Right click on this assistance new, let's create a dot file by the name assist underscore methods, or you can say functions, assistant functions. Import material dot, and then we implement a function by the name display snack bar, which receive two parameters, the context and the message text. To display snack bar, then using scatter messenger dot off context build dot show snack bar. Then we can add a snack bar content using text widget. We display the message text, and then of course you can add the text style for this text widget to apply for this text. So you can say style, text style, color, and apply any color you want for this message text. And you already know that for a scaffold we have also another property other than content. You can also change the background color for this scaffold. For example, which colors you want to proceed with. So you can proceed with green, gray, or any color you want. I will proceed with blue color, and for the text the color will be white. You can also apply another property for the snack bar, which is the behavior, or you can say kind of animation, which is by the name behavior. And we have basically different kind of behaviors which you can access using snack bar behavior dot, and you will see that we have fixed values floating. So which one do you want? Let's proceed with the floating one. So anyways, this is how we display a snack bar, or you can say a toast message basically. So now we will just call here our display snack bar. We will pass the build context to it and the message which we want to display. Now one thing you remember, that this case 400 state is basically the bad request, and in our backend API for that purpose we have added this status, okay, and this is the key name using which we will get this message as a response. So using this key name we can access it. So by the same key name we have to receive the value. You know that it comes in encoded form, so we have to decode it first. So we can say json.decode response http.body, and then inside the double quotes we can simply say message. So get that message. Now same goes for the other states. For example, the next one is 500. Now the 500 error message we can get using the key. If you see here for the 500 we have this key, so this same key we have to add here, which simply means get the value of error from the backend using our API. And then comes the last one, which is the success one, and you know that it is 200. So 200 means that the request is made successful. Let's add it here. So it will be on success condition. Now remember, this 200 is for a successful request. 201 simply means that the resource created successfully. This is bad request status code, and you know that 500 represents the server error. Now after that we are ready to communicate with using our API with the database. So for example, what we need to do is, now we need our IP address. So right click on assistance, new, create a new .file by the name global_variables, and now in here I will create a string type variable by the name IP address, and to this we will assign our IP address. So open up your command prompt and simply type ipconfig and press enter, and it will show you your IP address and other information about your internet and all the things which you are using on your PC or on your laptop. For my security purposes I just hide my IPv4 address, okay. I just put this small window here so that it is not visible. So anyways, this one which says IPv4 address, in front of it you will see your IP address here. Just copy that IP address and then paste your IP address here. Now alongside with your IP address you have to write your port number, which you can get from here index.js. That is, for example, our server is running on this port number 4000, so copy this port number and simply after your IP address just write colon and paste the port number, and then you can close this file. Now right click on controllers, new, let's create a .file by the name controller_authentication. We will create a class by the name controller authentication. So first of all, we will sign up user. So we can say sign up, or we can give it a proper name like create account. This will be a synchronous method, as we have to wait for the response from our API. And whenever we call this create account method, we have to pass some parameters to it. For example, the context, or you can say build context, username, user email, and user password. Then using the try catch block, if any exception, or you can say any error occur, we will simply display the error message. Otherwise, we are going to send the user data from the sign up page. So that data, we can access using our user model. Now when I say the data from the sign up page, it means the data which the user type on the sign up page in the text form fields. This method we will call from the sign up page when the user click on the sign up, or you can say the create account button in our Flutter app. So anyways, now the first thing, that we have the user ID, which is unique and created automatically by the MongoDB. So we will leave this empty, or you can say as an empty string like this. Then comes the username, which we will pass from here, which, as you know, that inside this method we are receiving the username as a parameter. Now this parameter, as I told you, when we will call this create account button from the sign up page, for example, let's call it so you will understand it more easily. So go to the sign up page, and when the user click on the create account button, then here we will call that create an instance of the controller authentication first, like you can say controller authentication. We will give it name as controller authentication. And then using this, we can access every method which is implemented inside this class, controller authentication. So for that purpose, we can simply say now controller authentication dot create account, to which we will pass the context of the sign up screen, and the second parameter which we have to pass is the username, which means from the text field that text which the user type. So that text is basically inside the variable name text, as you can see. So we can simply say name text. Let's break this code in pieces so we can see it easily. And then comes the email. So the email, we can get email text. And then comes password. Password is inside this password text variable. So the text from the text field which the user type on the sign up page, for example, the name, email, password we get from the text fields, we pass it as a parameter to our this create account method which we are receiving here. So as the ID is unique inside the MongoDB, so that's why we pass it as empty string. The username, we can assign this username which we receive as a parameter. Okay, that it is coming from the text form field, or from our sign up page. For example, then comes the user email and user password from the text field, just like this. That we also have to pass the user address as an empty string, and also the user type, which we already define in our backend as well. If you go to the user schema model.js, username, user email, user password, user address, and user type. By default we give to it user value. So if you want, of course, you can ignore it, or you can write the same value and assign to it, which is, for example, user. But as you know that by default we already implemented in the backend, we assign to it a value, so there is no need to pass this user type to it. The only thing that we need to pass to it is our JWT token, which we even define here in the model class. So this one we will pass as an empty string. However, the user type already we define in the backend, which will go as a default for any new user. The type will be user, and you know that later the user can become a seller, so it will be changed according to that. So you have our user repository, or you can say the user data. Now we have to simply make a request, that is using the HTTP. Make sure to import HTTP first as HTTP. So you can say HTTP dot response. Let's give it name as HTTP response. Wait HTTP dot post then we can simply write the URL or the link, you can say, to our API. So we can say URI.parse and then our URL, that is, for example, first we have our IP address, then after it go to your backend API, and for example if you go to the Auth.js, then for the sign up we have this URL. Okay, so copy this and simply come back here. So we will have IP address, and then after it you can paste it /API/auth/signup. This is the sign up. So we basically post a request, or you can say we make a communication to create a user account using our sign up API, which we implemented using our Node.js backend, and which is responsible to create a new account inside the MongoDB, along with the validations which we implemented, for example the email validation and the password which we convert to hash form, that is using, we make it secure. So I hope it makes sense. Now let's complete this. This is just the URL. Okay, using this we will basically communicate. Then comes which data we will pass. Well, that data we have to pass using the body. For example, the data is inside this user model, so we can say user model dot to JSON. Whenever we send data, we send it as JSON, and that is why on our user model class we implemented this to JSON, which is basically our data to map. In this format it will go, key value pair. So anyways, now the user data we pass, alongside with it we have to add the headers, which is required for HTTP request. Inside the double quotes, content dash type, and then application/JSON. So we have set up our HTTP response. Now is the time to send it. So using our assist, which is over this function assist HTTP. So we can say assist HTTP, make sure to import the assist HTTP dot this one, okay, like this. So anyways, now as you know, it needs this parameter, that is we have to pass to it response HTTP, which is the HTTP response. Build context is the context of our this screen from where we are calling it, and then the on success condition, that is after successfully, when everything goes successful, what we want to do. So in that case, if everything goes successfully, simply we are going to send the user to the login screen. So we can say navigator dot push build context comma root, which is material page root. So after successfully sign up, that is when the account is created successfully, we send the user to the login page, and then using our assistant functions where we have implemented this reusable function display snack bar, we will display a message also. So we can say, for example, display snack bar build context, and the message will be congratulations, account created. Please log in now. So this is all about the sign up, or you can say create account. Now the same goes for the sign in. So in case of sign in, let's minimize this code. Let's implement this. Let's implement it by the name login user. It will be asynchronous as well. Put curly braces, and then for the sign in we required build context, user email and user password only. So just like for the sign up, we use the try catch block, and then we make the HTTP response. So in the same way we can do for our sign in. For example, add a try catch block http.post uri.parse IP address, and then for the sign in we have this one, as you can see. So copy and paste here just like this, and then the information or the data which we will send is basically the email and password. As you know that the data our backend required is user email and user password for the sign in. So we say JSON encode, and then of course the user email and user password. So inside the double quotes, first write the key name user email, which we can pass. The value is inside the user email variable, which you know that on the login page, or you can say on the sign in page, we will call this login user method, and the text which the user will type inside the user email text field, it will be passed here, and the user from the password field the user type password. So that text we will pass from the login page, and it will be assigned here to this user password, just like we did for the sign up. For example, like here we will just create an instance of the controller authentication, and the email and password which the user type on the text fields. After, when the user click on the login button, we will simply call the login user method, and to which we will pass these parameters, that is these data. For example, build context is the context of the screen. This email is the email which the user type on the text field on the login page, which is inside this email text. So pass this email text and the password text from the password text field. So we pass this as a parameter which is receiving here, okay, and then we pass that to our backend. Same goes for the password. So comma user password. So now we have the HTTP response, that is after sending the request. If everything goes successful, then on success condition we will simply send the user to the main page of the app. For now we don't have main page, so for now we will just send the user to the same page, which is login page, and it will display this login successful message. So this is how we can consume the login API, okay, and then this is how we can consume the sign up API in Flutter app. This is the Flutter consumption of our API for example for the sign up. Now you can also add a progress bar. For example, when the user click on the sign up button, you know that we call this function where we consume the sign up API. Now what we want to do is, as you know that we will wait for the response from the API, either the account created successfully or not. So during that time we will display a progress indicator. So we need a boolean type variable. Let's give it name as in progress, and we will give it a default value false. So when this in progress is true, it means the user clicked on the create account button. So we have to make sure that during that time when the user click on the create account button, it must have a true value. And then when it is completed successfully, that's why we add the wait, that is we are waiting for it to execute completely. Then we will set the value for the in progress to false. Now based on this boolean type variable on the user interface, we are going to display the progress indicator. For example, here we can say in progress. So if it has a true value, then at the center we are going to display the progress indicator. Otherwise else display the create account button. Okay, simple as that. So here we can simply say child circular progress indicator. Color for this will be colors dot blue, or you can proceed with green. It is totally up to you. Now the same thing we will do on the login page. So just copy this piece of code and go to the login page, and here we have this button. Okay, so paste it here like this, just like on the sign up we have now on the login page. Also on the click event, make sure that you wait for the response, and the in progress value we will set to true once the user click on the button, and then once it is executed successfully, then set it back to false. So this is all about our sign in and sign up, and now we are ready to test our application. So open up your emulator or connect your real phone, and now let's install the app on our phone, and go to your database. Delete the accounts which we created during testing our API. So you can simply delete these accounts from here. Okay, once it is deleted, come back here, and before testing the app again, we have a small mistake. Go to the assistance global variable, and here this IP address alongside with it, as you know we are making the request using HTTP, so we forgot to add http:// Please make sure to include this. After it, you know this is your IP address, and then after it colon, and then your port number. Remember, in your case you will have your own IP address. Please do not write this IP address, because this will not work for you. I have already told you how to get this IP address. Go to your command prompt and simply write the command IP config, and when you press enter, it will show you your IPv4 address. In front of it, here your complete IP address is written. Select and copy it, and simply add the IP address here. Then after it you have colon and then your port number. Now remember, if you change your internet, let's say the other day, the next day, then your IP address will change. If your internet is from another company, then please, during that time, you have to check your IP address again and update it here. Okay, you have to update your IP address here. Otherwise, it will not work for you. Just in the command prompt, write ipconfig and get the updated IP address and simply paste it here. That's it. Simple as that. On the login page, here when we set the value to true and false on the click event, make sure to do it inside the set state to reflect the changes on the user interface in real time. Same on the sign up page as well. On the main.dot, let's add the debug show check mode banner and set this to false. It will basically remove the banner from the top of the screen. You see banner in Flutter apps. Now please remember, always whenever you want to test your Flutter application, make sure that you start running the server. For that purpose, go to your backend Amazon Cloud API, open up the terminal and run the command nodejs. Press enter, run the command, so server start running, as you can see. Now let's go back and let's install the app on our phone. So the app is running now. Let's proceed to the sign up page. Fill out the sign up form, click on create account. Congratulations, account created. Please log in now. So our code is working. Then you will see the new user account, that is the new data is here. Let's create one more account. For example, let's say John Parker, john@gmail.com. Now as the email is badly formatted, like for example instead of dot I put comma. So if I click create account, it will return the error message from the server, as you can see. So we have to write the correct email. So let's create account. Congratulations, account created successfully. If you want to check the data, make sure to refresh the database. And here we go. Here you can see we have another user, John Parker. Now you can go to the on the login page. We are already on the login page, and you can now test this feature as well. Now for example, if I put the wrong password and correct email login, it says password is incorrect, which is the response from the server, that is from our API, from our backend API, Node.js backend implementation, which we have done. Or even let's say if the password is correct, but let's say the email is wrong, any email which do not even exist. So let's check this one. This email is not associated with any user. Try correct email, which you know that we have implemented it, as you can see. So anyways, we have already tested these features. Let's check out the login feature, successful feature. So write correct email and password, then click login. So here we go. Here you can see you are logged in successfully.